لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم واجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اجعل أعمالنا خالصة لوجهك ولا تجعل فيها حظا لغيرك. وصل اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How's everyone today?
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We start off by, we get back into our Sarf. This is the last week we're going to be looking at the Sarf, or revising it and checking answers to examples and stuff like that. Next week, inshallah, we're going to be moving on to some Nahu. We'll be looking at Nahu and specifically Marfu'at. What we mean by that is, Marfu'at, you know what's Marfu', something that's in Halatul Rafa. But basically reasons for which things are in that hal. We'll look at that next week, inshallah. Right, so we're going to jump from Sarf to Nahu next week, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So for this week, it's just a final revision and checking of answers of this Sarf. So what we'll do here is, we will say the scales together in the whole class. Then we're gonna go into the breakout groups for a few minutes, and I want everybody to have the opportunity to say all of the scales, to the group, and you guys can help each other like that. Like I said again, in a class setting, usually we'd have everybody saying it aloud, and you'd be able to hear to some degree when there's, when there's proficiency and when people are saying the scale right. And doing it online is just not possible for us to all say it together, etc. So for that reason, we're going to go into the breakout groups. You can each person can say all of the scales to their group, just to gain that confidence, to know that you're saying it right. Sometimes you may think you're saying it right, but one of your group mates can tell you that, okay, you're saying this letter wrong, or you're pronouncing this hamza like a ayn, or this ayn like a hamza, or something like that, and they can iron that out for you. And in ironing that out, you will then internalize it and memorize it correctly. So that is an important part of the process. So we'll do that secondly, and then afterwards, when we come back, we'll just go through the last of some of those examples. Obviously not all of them, but we'll go through some of the examples of the Mazid Fi in the Quran, and then we'll conclude our study on the Mazid Fi for now. Right, so like by the end of today, if you've had any questions that's been lingering in your mind or anything like that, then please do ask them, right, so that we can focus on our Nahu from next week, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Right, let's start off. We'll just say our scales together. Bismillah. Right, Bismillah. Scale number 2. فعل يفعل تفعيلا مفعل مفعل فعل لا تفعل. Third scale. فاعل يفاعل فعالا مفاعلة مفاعل مفاعل فاعل لا تفاعل. Fourth scale. أفعل يفعل إفعالا مفعل مفعل أفعل لا تفعل. Fifth scale. تفعل يتفعل تفعلا متفعل متفعل تفعل لا تتفعل. Sixth scale. تفاعل يتفاعل تفاعلا متفاعل متفاعل تفاعل لا تتفاعل. 7th scale. انفعل ينفعل انفعالا منفعل منفعل انفعل لا تنفعل. 8th scale. افتعل يفتعل افتعالا مفتعل مفتعل افتعل لا تفتعل. 8th scale. افعل يفعل افعلالا مفعل افعل لا تفعل. 10th scale. استفعل يستفعل استفعالا مستفعل مستفعل استفعل لا تستفعل. I'm just going to say all of them one more time. Uh, okay, no problem. Whatever group request you have, you can just send it to me privately. Okay, I'm going to say the scales again. I'm just going to say it all together. فعل يفعل تفعيلا مفعل مفعل فعل لا تفعل. فاعل يفاعل فعالا مفاعلة مفاعل مفاعل فاعل لا تفاعل. أفعل يفعل إفعالا مفعل مفعل أفعل لا تفعل. تفعل يتفعل تفعلا متفعل متفعل تفعل لا تتفعل. تفاعل يتفاعل تفاعلا متفاعل متفاعل تفاعل لا تتفاعل. انفعل ينفعل انفعالا منفعل منفعل انفعل لا تنفعل. افتعل يفتعل افتعالا مفتعل 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 افتعل لا تفتعل. افعل يفعل افعلالا مفعل افعل لا تفعل. استفعل يستفعل استفعالا مستفعل مستفعل استفعل لا تستفعل. That's all they know. So why I said it like that is because ideally that's how you want to know the scales. You want to know the scales like the back of your hand, right? So even after we end this section on Sarf, you should make a habit of just now and then saying these scales so that they are fresh in your mind. And yes, the usage of the scale is not in being able to say it very quickly. The usage of the scale is in being able to identify the different parts of the scale. But if you're able to say the scale quickly, you'll be able to identify its parts quickly. Like, I mean, you can ask me any, any part of any one of these scales, and I think that I'll be able to get to it quite quickly. Somebody shout out question any part of any one of these scales.
انفعالا.
Infa'alan is the master of the 7th bab. Like if you should be able to know it like that. If you just say anything istaf'ala, I should know it's the past tense of the 10th bab. If I ask you, if I say to you, what's the present or the passive particle of the 8th bab, you should be able to tell me mustaf'alun. If you ask me what is the nahi of the 2nd bab, you should be able to tell me la tufa'il. If I anything, you should the babs must be second nature to you, seriously. Because in hearing the Arabic language, those are all background processes. Your processor must be fast, but not everybody has the same processor off the shelf. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to like really load this set of scales into your RAM so that it's easy to access all the time. It's open there all the time. So yeah, what we're going to do now is, inshallah, I'm going to put you into the breakout groups, and I want you guys to say the scales to each other, right? Try and say all of them. Right? Each person will say all of the scales to their partners, inshallah. And then we'll come back. And if you have extra time and you're waiting around your group, then you do that. Just say, the master of the fifth bab, uh, the Amr of the fourth bab, and try and see if you can recall them like that. It's just for practice. Okay, so I've assigned everybody two rooms. I'm going to open up the rooms now. If you would like me to just switch the room that you're in, then just please, come back into the main room, and then I'll put you into one of the other rooms, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Maulana.
Okay, again, yes, I'm going to answer you, inshallah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome back. Tell me now, before we move on to anything else, look, that's like the last time we're going to be focusing on the Mazid fee scales in terms of, constant revision, etc. So are there any questions or any difficulties that anyone has before we move on?
Lona, can I request that we, Marv, can you request that we don't just not go back to it? Maybe you can do some spot testing in the
Okay.
next classes so that we can just make sure that we keep going through our revision.
Yes, okay. I was actually thinking of, just at the beginning of the class, like I said it at the beginning of this class, just once, go through all the scales, and maybe ask one or two questions. But yeah, we can definitely do that. Sophie?
Oh, no, I haven't checked, but if it's not, can we get this page, please? This page of all the parts in one table.
Okay, I'll do that for you, inshallah. The next thing I just wanted to point out to you, right? If you remember when you learnt your first scale in Sarf, right? You learnt the past tense active voice, right? Fa'ala. Then you learnt the present tense active voice, yaf'alu, right? So you learnt the fa'ala scale and then the yaf'alu scale. And after that, you learnt the past tense passive voice, fu'ila, and the present tense passive voice, yuf'alu. Correct? Is that what you did?
Yes, Malana.
Yes, but
Right.
we were struggling, man.
Right. So now, if you look at the scale that we have in front of us, what does it say there? We have al-fi'l al-madi and then al-fi'l al-mudari'. Right? Now, listen to me closely. That should be al-fi'l al-madi al-ma'lum and al-fi'l al-mudari' al-ma'lum. What do I mean by al-ma'lum? The active voice. Right? But if you go through the scale, you'll see there that there's no column that says الفعل الماضي المجهول and الفعل الماضي or الفعل المضارع المجهول. And those usually, when we learn the scales, or when people traditionally learn these Mazid fee scales, they do actually include those. So those would usually be included here. So the scale would usually sound فعل يفعل تفعيلا مفعل فعل يفعل تفعيلا and then مفعل فعل لا تفعل. Right? So what am I saying? There's usually actually 3 extra columns here. Those 3 columns are الفعل الماضي المجهول الفعل المضارع المجهول and then the masdar is repeated. So it creates something of a rhyme. But I'm not going to say it with a tune now. If you want to YouTube some Malaysians saying it, you'll see how they sing these scales. But the point that I was making was that we've omitted those columns, right? And we've omitted those columns for ease of learning the scale, right? Well, the masdar is just, the one column is just a repetition. The masdar is the same; it's just a repetition of that masdar. The 2 that we've left out is the past tense majhul and the present tense majhul, right? Why we omitted them is because they can be formed in the same way for all of them, for all of the scales, right? And how is that formed? For both the past tense and the present tense. Okay, somebody's mic is on. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum, Maulana. So isn't it that you put the Dhamma on the first letter and then you put the Kasra on the second letter?
Kasra on the second root letter for past tense.
Oh, okay.
And fatha on the second root letter for present tense. Right? Like just remember the first one. Remember the first example from the first scale. Fu'ila, and then the present tense is yuf'alu. Right. So now tell me, what do you think it will be for the second bab? The past tense.
Fu'ila.
Fu'ila. Correct. And the present tense?
Fa'alu.
Yufa'alu.
Yufa'alu. Right? Yufa'alu. So it's like, yeah. Fu'ila yufa'alu. It must, I'm just going to make a note here. Right? For the one column, it's going to be U and then I. And this one is going to be U at the beginning and then A. That's for the ma'loom. I mean, this is for the mudari and this is for the majhul.
Mulana, for the mudari, the only thing they changed there was the second root letter getting a fatha, because the u already has the dhamma.
Okay, but not all of them. Like for example, in
Yeah.
yatafa'alu, yanfa'ilu,
Oh, okay.
yafta'ilu, those don't, right? But for the mudari, for the majhul, all of them have the dhamma. So there's a reason for which we didn't put this in the scale, right? It's less common, number one. Number two, for ease of learning the scale. Number three, they can all be formed in the same way. So I don't want you to come now right at the end and then fret about it, right? We will see this in action throughout. All that I want you to do is remember the rule, right? And that rule is that the past tense majhul can be formed by having the first letter have a dhamma and the second root letter having a kasra. The present tense majhul can be formed by the first letter, not the first root letter, the first letter, the very first letter of the scale. The verb starting with a dhamma and the second root letter having a fatha. I'm going to go through all of them now.
We had it in action last week with Surah Naziat, Buriza.
وَبُرِّزَتِ الْجَحِيمُ. That second bab, majhul.
Yes, we had it in action. We had to scratch our heads there.
Perfect. So I'm going to go through all of them for you now, just so that you've heard them. On the second bab, what should be here? What are the two things that should be here? فُعِلَ and يُفَعَلُ. فُعِلَ and يُفَعَلُ. This one will be, and فَعَلَ, it will be فُعِلَ. فُعِلَ. And
So
the
does
present,
that get a wow?
yes, because remember in the first one, it has a alif. But the alif is just a pulling sound. And it's the pulling sound that goes with the ah. So there's a ah, fa. How do I pull a fa sound? I make it fa. How do I pull a oo sound? It will become oo. So that's what it becomes. You can't say, like, you can't even say a fa with a dhamma and then an alif after it. You can't even say it like, what's it? Yeah, you can't. So the pulling sound that goes with the oo is a wow. So it will be fu'ila. We have our dhamma there, ila. And then the present tense will be what? Yufa'alu. So we had fu'ila, yufa'alu on the second verb. On the third verb, we had fu'ila, yufa'alu. On the fourth verb, we have uf'ila. And the present tense will be yuf'alu. Fifth verb will be fu'ila. And the past and the present tense will be yutafa'alu.
Mulana, just say that again.
Tufu'ila.
So two, four. Okay, so both. Okay.
Yeah, they're both together. Tufu'ila. Yutafa'alu. The sixth verb will be tufu'ila. And the present tense will be yutafa'alu. The seventh verb will be unfu'ila. And the present tense will be yunfa'alu. Yunfa'alu. And the eighth verb it will be uftu'ila. And the present tense will be yufta'alu. And in the ninth verb, we don't actually form it. Right? But for the 10th verb, it will be ustuf'ila. And the present tense will be yustaf'alu. That I'm going to say it, I'm going to go through it again. Scale 2. Fu'ila yufa'alu. Scale 3. Fu'ila yufa'alu. Scale 4. Uf'ila yuf'alu. Scale 5. Tufu'ila yutafa'alu. Scale 6. Tufu'ila yutafa'alu. Scale 7. Unfu'ila yunfa'alu. But also it generally isn't used over there either. Scale 8. Uftu'ila yufta'alu. Scale 9, not formed over there. Scale 8, sorry, 10. Ustuf'ila yustaf'alu. Right. So that's how we form it. The same right through. U on the first root letter, or not on the first root letter, U on the first letter of the verb, I on the second root letter. That's for past tense. For present tense, U on the first letter, not first root letter, the first letter, the U or whatever. And then A on the second root letter. Right, and that applies for the first verb right through to the 10th verb. Any questions on that? So why?
For the sixth verb,
Yes.
I think you said tufu'ila. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you said yutafa'alu. So the Madi, both the first letters get the Dhamma, but the Mudari, only the first letter gets the Dhamma.
Yes, that's correct. And that happens for the 5th and the 6th verb.
Okay, I'm just double.
And the 8th verb to some degree, because it becomes uftu'ila.
Okay.
And for the 10th verb, ustuf'ila. So you can just make a note here.
So the rule I would think for the Mahdi would be that the first letter and the first root letter must get a if there is an additional letter to it.
Yeah, that will work, yeah. Or the first letter and the first additional letter. If it just depends which one is first. Just say the first 2 letters.
We tried to write a formula here.
Okay, it doesn't work.
So first 2 letters don't work
if
for
it
the
doesn't
second
have a sukoon, yes. If it doesn't have a sukoon.
The first 2 letters don't work for the second one.
What if you say all the letters including the first root letter? So does that work?
And just say for Bab's number 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Just say from 5 till the end. The extra letter must also have a Dhamma. Right. But yeah, like I said, I don't want you to worry about it. The reason why I'm telling it to you, right, is so that when you come across it in action, you're not thrown off. Hey, this looks like the second one, but I can't figure out what on earth it is. No. It's very possibly just the majhul form of that verb. Like when you came across the verb burriza, wa burrizatil jahimu liman yara. You may think to yourself, but I've never heard a verb like this. Now at least you have the consideration in your mind. Okay, well, this looks like the second verb. Maybe it's the majhul. And then you can consider now, look, how would the majhul be formed? This is how the majhul would be formed. Does it seem to fit that? First, start with the u. First or second root letter have a fatha. Or start with the u. Second root letter as a fatha. Does it look something like that? If it looks like that, then you go with it being majhul, right? So I just wanted that phenomena of the majhul to be present in your mind, and then for you to have some idea of how to identify it. Most of the time, you're not going to mistake if a verb is majhul. You won't mistake if a verb is majhul. Yeah. So I just wanted that to be a last rider there, so that you know that the majhul exists, right? And you know somewhat what it looks like. After that, it's very hard that you're going to miss it. If you come across something like Burriza again, it's highly unlikely that you're now not going to think about it being the majhul, unless you forget about the fact that these abwab have majhul forms as well. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to alert you to the existence and then give you an idea of what they look like. I don't want to introduce it into the scale. If I introduce it into the scale, then it's going to defeat the purpose for which we removed it from the scale. Right? And that is the ease of learning the scales. Right? So we felt, well, Mullah Khalil primarily felt that if we remove it from the scale, it will make the scale easier to learn. But the effect of removing it will be mitigated by just telling you that they do exist and giving you an idea of what they sound like. Right? Or mentioning this principle that I highlighted here on top. Right? So that's that. Any questions? What I'll try and do is now actually for the Mazid fee in the Quran, I'm just going to get all the answers done, and then I'll send you that inshallah as an answer sheet, and then we move on to the Nahu next week. I don't want to spend another week on that. I think if you have, after giving you the answers, if you have any questions or anything like that, we can always entertain those questions in that time. Right? Is there any last things that we want to discuss on this? No? Okay. Then we'll end here for now. We'll just see if our next teacher is with us.